good afternoon. Thank you for tuning into This Is Now. I'm Dylan Ancheta in the H&N Digital Center. First today, Honolulu police are investigating a shooting this morning that sent a 55-year-old man to the hospital. It happened in the Pearl Harbor area, and police are seeking any tips from the community. Hawaii News Now is still gathering details into the incident, but so far we know that officers were called to the scene in the area of Kohumua Street around 1:15 this morning. The victim was reportedly shot in his right pelvis area. The suspect is on the run at last check and is identified only as a male, possibly wearing a cream-colored hoodie. We'll bring you any new developments throughout the day on our H&N mobile app. And in crime news out of Kauai, just days after it was announced that the Kauai Macy's, which is the Garden Island's only Macy's, was set to close, thieves have targeted it in a jewelry heist. Now, Kauai police say it happened early Monday around 3:50 a.m. Officers responded to a glass break alarm at the store, which is located in the Kukui Grove Mall. When officers arrived, they found the glass doors shattered at the west entrance, along with multiple jewelry cases also shattered. A preliminary report says the thieves got away with $20,000 worth of jewelry. The store was closed Monday for cleanup and was set to reopen today. The investigation is ongoing. This comes after last week Friday when Macy's announced nationwide cuts to personnel and store locations. Some 2,300 people were notified across the nation that they would be laid off, with their last day being January 26th. In news out of the courts, the so-called Miske enterprise trial is now down to one, Mike Miske himself. He's accused of being a criminal mastermind, but his lawyers say he's the victim of a government conspiracy. In opening arguments yesterday, the prosecution said Miske's enterprise, quote, used fear, violence, and intimidation to get what he wanted. What he wanted was money, control, and revenge. The prosecution aims to prove the enterprise was involved in everything from illegal fireworks to the murder of Jonathan Frazier, who Miske allegedly blamed for his son's death. Before the trial began, Miske's half-brother entered a surprise guilty plea as a part of a deal.
It makes sense. He's going to get credit for pleading guilty. He's got a bunch of charges dismissed. And so it's definitely to his benefit to argue at sentencing, hey, look, I accepted responsibility before trial started.
The trial was supposed to last several months, but it could be a lot shorter now because only one set of attorneys will be calling and cross-examining witnesses. In the race for the White House, voters in New Hampshire are turning out in the nation's first primary. The race for the Republican presidential nomination is down to just two lead frontrunners, former President Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. Skylar Henry reports.
Voters streamed to the polls, casting ballots in the first one-on-one contest in the Republican race.
I voted for Trump. I care most about Second Amendment and pretty much staying out of war.
With 22 delegates at stake, former President Donald Trump stopped at a Londonderry polling place. He's predicting a big win here in New Hampshire, a week after his Iowa victory.
There's never been a movement like this, make America great again, in the history of our country.
Polls favor the former president by a wide margin, but Nikki Haley is hoping to cash in with independents and anti-Trump voters. Her supporters say the former UN ambassador has what it takes to be president, especially when it comes to foreign policy.
She understands the intricacies of that, understands that we need to be strong on the world stage. And right now we're perceived as weak.
She just adds a very optimistic energy to the room. And that's who we want to lead our country, someone who is very positive.
In fact, the results are already in from tiny Dixville Notch. All 6 registered voters cast their ballots for Haley.
I'm not in the prediction business, but I do believe that now that it's a two-person race, it might be a little closer than the Trump campaign would like.
Campaigning in Hampton, Haley welcomed the early sweep.
You know, right now we'll take whatever we can take. It was certainly a good start. It gave us some good energy and momentum, and I'm grateful to those 6 people.
She says no matter what happens in the Granite State, she'll continue to fight. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Manchester, New Hampshire.
In international news, the Israeli military has said that 21 soldiers were killed yesterday in the Gaza Strip in a single incident, which is the deadliest day for its forces since this war began. NBC's Raf Sanchez reports from Tel Aviv.
U.S. Navy fighter jets leading a major new wave of joint American and British airstrikes against Iranian-backed Houthi militants in Yemen. The attacks targeting missiles, radar sites, and weapons depots, according to U.S. Central Command. It's the 8th time Western forces have struck in Yemen in response to months of Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, which are threatening to hold up global shipping. The U.S. and U.K. saying, we will not hesitate to defend lives and the free flow of commerce. But so far, the strikes failing to deter the Houthis, who say their attacks will continue until the war in Gaza ends. That doesn't look likely anytime soon. Israel's military saying this morning it's encircled the city of Han Yunis, sending thousands of Palestinian civilians fleeing further south in hope of safety. But Israel also reeling from news 24 troops were killed in Gaza yesterday, its single bloodiest day of the war. Prime Minister Netanyahu saying, on behalf of our heroes, we will not stop fighting until total victory. But 2 Israeli officials tell NBC News they've offered Hamas a 2-month pause in the fighting in exchange for the release of the remaining hostages. Families of those hostages storming a parliamentary committee yesterday, demanding action from their government. You will not sit here while our children die, this father shouts. Among the protesters, Gil Dickman, whose cousin Carmel is still a hostage.
If you could speak to her now, what would you tell her?
I'd say, Carmeli, I'm so sorry it took us such a long time. I really want this to end. We all want this to end, but we're coming for you.
H&N investigates unsealed court records in the corruption trial of 3 former city leaders. Turns out prosecutors have secret recordings, and the recordings reveal the effort to pay $250,000 to then police chief Louis Kealoha, even though he was under federal investigation. Our chief investigative reporter Lynn Kawano has the details.
The city attorneys had been fighting to keep these documents secret. A judge ruled against them. Hundreds of pages of records opened up for public eyes. The documents are part of the criminal case against 3 former Honolulu administrators, Donna Leong, who was the city's corporation counsel, former managing director Roy Amamiya, and ex-police commission chair Max Sword. The government says the defendants conspired to pay the $250,000 severance to ex-police chief Louis Kealoha, skirting the required city council approval. Leong faces an additional charge of lying to federal agents. Legal experts say the details in the now unsealed documents are damaging.
To me, when I read it, my gut as I read it is saying this is a low-down, underhanded scheme. But a low-down, underhanded scheme isn't technically illegal, depending upon what the intent is and what you're trying to do. And that's what the jury's going to have to decide.
Among the exhibits, transcripts of audio recordings from January 2017 made by acting HPD Chief Kerry Okimoto. Okimoto does not want the payoff to Kealoha to be taken from his police budget. The court records show Donna Leong explains how he'll get the money replenished. She says, when you run out, the Director for Budget and Fiscal Services, BFS, will transfer funds from the provisional account. She goes on to say, in your case, it would be to hire a new officer to fill a vacant position. She explains that the city council doesn't need to be consulted if it's done this way. Okimoto disagrees, telling her anything over $100,000 requires council notification. He says somebody's going to ask. I'm not ready to go and fib. It wasn't for new recruits or contract hires or anything like that. It was for the severance package for Kealoha. The transcripts show Okimoto repeatedly tells her he does not feel comfortable with what he's being told to do. He says they are violating the law and circumventing the system. Leong reassures him, saying, I would never ask you to do something that's illegal. In a separate recorded conversation, Max Sword tells Okimoto, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't legal. But when asked why the payoff has to be funded by HPD's budget in the first place, the transcripts show Sword replies, it's very simple, so you don't have to go to the 7 bananas or 9 bananas, the city council.
The fact that HPD is secretly recording top city and county officials because they believe there's this conspiracy to do something improper That fact alone is shocking.
Okimoto writes in an email to other concerned HPD leaders that he met with Roy Amamiya, who apparently said, "You really digging your heels in about this?" Okimoto's email continues, Amamiya and Mayor Kurt Caldwell were concerned that he was burning bridges by not going along with the scheme.
We tend to look at our government officials and kind of hold them up to a higher standard.
The Public First Law Center, a nonprofit, was behind the effort to get the documents unsealed.
You know, these are our public courts. They're funded by the taxpayers, and that the public has a right to access court hearings and proceedings.
The three defendants have denied any wrongdoing, saying the payoff process was legal. While only transcripts of the conversations are available right now, the actual audio recordings are expected to be played at trial in the fall. I'm Lynn Kawano, Hawaii News Now.
Well, an effort is underway to count the number of homeless individuals on the streets in Hawaii. The point-in-time count is taking place. RK Land has more.
Aloha from Partners in Care. This is really the headquarters where so much of the planning for today's work really begins. I'm with Laura Thielen from Partners with Care. Laura, I want to just ask you again, the folks that are out on the ground doing that work, hugely important, but this is where we kind of get everything together. And tell me a little bit about where people are heading out today.
Yeah, so we've got over 450 volunteers out across Oahu, and what they're doing is they're doing two different things. They're doing as many surveys on folks that are unsheltered as possible.
And we have a visual here too in your conference room. This is kind of what you call a heat map. I think one of the interesting things that I notice about this, and most people understand, but it does give you an important reminder, but this isn't just a problem for certain neighborhoods like Chinatown or Waikiki. You have people all over Oahu.
Yep, we have folks who are unsheltered across the island and across the state. And this is a heat map from last year's count where we counted over 4,000 individuals. And so where you see the red circle dots and the almost white areas, that's where there's a really big concentration of folks.
What are some of the trends that we've noticed over just the last few years?
Well, some of the big things that we really wanted to highlight that we do special reports on is Native Hawaiians, making sure that we're providing enough services for that population, and at this point we don't. And then also the kupuna. We're seeing lots and lots more elderly individuals who have never been homeless in their life realize that they're going to lose their housing because of the price of rent.
And so this data helps to determine funding, and it helps to kind of guide and steer those resources to the right groups. One last thing I wanted to ask you about is the partnerships that you folks have with different agencies, namely the VA. You were telling me something about that, and they're really interesting stuff.
Yeah, we have over 60 partners that help us with this and provide services on a daily basis. And one in particular is the Veterans Administration. They actually get the same information that we're getting today live. So every single time a veteran is encountered this morning, they will be tracked by the VA so that they can really figure out, are they getting services right now from Veterans Administration? And if not, they're going to send people out to meet with those folks.
Very good. I imagine that the technology as it evolves has made this a lot easier, more efficient at least. So.
Easier, and more importantly, it really gets down to the root issues of why people are experiencing homelessness. This is all self-reported, so it's really important to listen to what's going on out there and what people really are finding hard to get out of their situations.
Very good. Laura Thielen with us from Partners in Care, and we thank you and the work that so many of your volunteers, employees with other agencies are doing today. Really important stuff. Now, they're always looking for people to help out. It's too late, of course, for this point-in-time count, but we'll connect you with Partners in Care. If that's something you'd like to do, you can find the information at hawaiinewsnow.com. We'll send things back into the studio for now.
Today, the CBS family, along with millions of viewers and radio listeners, are mourning the loss of a legendary broadcast voice. Michael George has a look at the life of Charles Osgood, who was part anchorman, part musician, and 100% authentic storyteller.
You know the song? You are my sunshine. For 22 years, Americans tuned in to CBS Sunday Morning with Charles Osgood.
I'm Charles Osgood, and this is Sunday Morning.
He began hosting the show in 1994 after Charles Kuralt passed the baton.
We'll be in the good hands of Charles Osgood starting next Sunday morning.
With one of the most distinctive voices in broadcasting,
people heard the news bulletins,
and his trademark bow ties, Osgood brought more than 6 million weekly viewers music,
just like the ones I used to know,
and poetry.
We know paying taxes is fair and it's just, but it's foolish to pay any more than we must.
As host of the Emmy-winning program.
People can listen to a newscast and come away thinking, boy, this is a terrible time to be alive. That's not the whole story. There is a whole story about people who are doing wonderful things.
The Bronx native spent nearly half a century at CBS News.
Charles Osgood, CBS News, on a 1949 Motorola.
Building a reputation as a respected journalist.
At the top of the news, President Bush is in Holland.
And a gifted writer.
They call it cyberphobia.
But his first love, radio.
See you on the radio. I say that every week. A peculiar phrase, some people think, for anyone to speak.
Osgood got his start at Fordham University's WFUV.
This is Charles Osgood.
And later launched the Osgood File, one of the longest-running features in radio history.
Edward R. Murrow sure knew how to use his voice on the radio.
He was at home at the piano. He wrote a song that charted in 1967 and performed on some iconic stages. He signed off from the radio at the end of 2017 and said goodbye to Sunday Morning a year earlier at age 83.
I want to thank you all, our wonderful audience, and I also want to thank all these people.
Osgood said if it were possible, he would have done it forever.
And I've got to be drifting along.
Michael George, CBS News.
Rest in peace to him. Thank you so much for all his work. Let's send you live outside now for a look at Pu'awaina, more commonly known as Punch Bowl here on Oahu. It is a nice 80 degrees. Coming up after this short break, Guy Hoggy will have a look at your local weather forecast. Stay tuned.
How's it on this Tuesday? We're watching this cold front. As it approaches the state, we can expect more clouds, more showers, and stronger winds. It's expected onto Kauai by tonight, moving down to Oahu by tomorrow afternoon, and then after that, it's going to move on to Maui County. Likely not hitting the Big Island. It should dissipate before it gets that far to the east. And those winds will be getting stronger as that cold front gets a little bit closer. So by this afternoon, those south winds should be running about 15 to 25 miles an hour. Overall, today should be be fairly dry. A few passing showers, yes, but not a lot of rain yet until that front moves in starting tonight. So again, Kauai expected to see the rain tonight, Oahu and Maui County tomorrow and on Thursday. And as far as the surf, we got a new swell that's going to be picking up in the afternoon. So a high surf advisory has been extended for north and west shores. And with those winds picking up today, it might be pretty good early, but it might be a little choppy in the afternoon. And that's why the South Shore is expecting a boost with those stronger winds and a wrap of that swell. So again, fairly dry today with breezy winds getting stronger in the afternoon. Now, as that front drops in, those winds will get even stronger tomorrow, 15 to 30 with some stronger gusts. We could get some spotty power outages, especially for windward areas of Oahu and Kauai. And then slowly, conditions will start drying up. Still a little damp for Maui County on Thursday. And then by Friday, statewide should be fairly dry. But another cold front is expected in sometime around Monday.
Well, there's lots of excitement in Hollywood today now that the nominations for the 96th Annual Academy Awards have been announced. As usual, there are some big snubs and surprises. Danya Backus reports from Los Angeles.
Congratulations to this year's nominees.
Actors Jack Quaid and Zazie Beetz announced the nominations Tuesday, and Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer led the pack with 13, including Best Picture and Best Director.
Why are these men looking at me?
The other half of the Barbenheimer phenomenon, Barbie, racked up 8 nominations, including Best Picture and a surprise Best Supporting Actress nod for America Ferrera. But filmmaker Greta Gerwig and star Margot Robbie were left out of the Best Director and Best Actress categories. Also competing for Best Picture are American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. For Best Director, Nolan will face off against Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, along with the directors of Anatomy of a Fall, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest.
Anita, you were here.
Lily Gladstone made history with her Best Actress nomination for her role in Killers of the Flower Moon.
She becomes the first Native American woman to ever be nominated in this category.
She'll compete against Annette Bening for Nyad, Sandra Hoolier in Anatomy of a Fall, Carey Mulligan in Maestro, and Emma Stone in Poor Things.
You got nice color scheme.
But Gladstone's co-star Leonardo DiCaprio didn't make the cut in the Best Actor category. Instead, the nominations went to Bradley Cooper for Maestro, Coleman Domingo for Rustin, Paul Giamatti for The Holdovers, Oppenheimer's Cillian Murphy, and Jeffrey Wright in American Fiction. Danya Backus, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Don't forget, coming up right after This Is Now is Spotlight every Tuesday afternoon. Here's Ryan and Yunji with a preview.
Well, last week marked the beginning of yet another legislative session, and on the next Spotlight Now, we catch up with the top leadership to talk about the state's priorities.
Senate President Ron Kochi, along with House Speaker Scott Saiki, will be joining us live. We'll take your questions as well. Join us live at 1 on K5.
And finally today, have you ever made an accident on a phone-in order or a DoorDash per se? That's what happened to one family a few years ago, but only now the internet is learning about it and falling in love with the story. CNN's Jeannie Moose reports.
They thought they'd ordered several burgers, some fries, and a few chicken McNuggets.
This is a prank. It has to be a prank.
Instead, they got inundated with McNuggets, so many that Grandma couldn't count.
30, 40, 50, 60, 70.
Without bursting into laughter, her son-in-law put his head on the counter.
It was nuggets and nuggets and nuggets.
Delivered from a McDonald's in Long Beach, California by a DoorDash driver.
The guy said this was the biggest order he's ever had.
And they didn't skimp on the sauce. Jessica Vaccaro's then 4-year-old son had questions.
That's a lot. Mommy, is that a lot? Grandma, is this funny?
Jessica only recently unearthed this 2017 video. She posted it. It went viral. They ended up giving most of the McNuggets to the homeless.
We packed them all up and we went down to the beach and we handed them out.
Her husband, Chris, thinks he accidentally added a 0, ordering 20 rather than just 2 10-piece boxes. He admits he barely looked at the total bill, And he dropped this nugget.
I consider myself a bit of a chicken McNugget connoisseur.
But 200? Give us a McBreak.
McNuggets, dip, dip, dip.
Jeannie Mose, CNN.
At McDonald's.
New York.
I don't know about you, but I am certainly craving chicken McNuggets for lunch now. We've got one more story in good news now for you today. The restaurant chain Zippy's is celebrating Hawaiian Language Month in February with a menu translated into Olelo Hawaii and, of course, offering free language classes. Kumujona Kahanuola Solatorio will be offering in-person introductory level at select Zippy's locations. You can sign up at zippys.com/Olelo. It's always good to learn Olelo Hawaii, one of the official languages here of the state of Hawaii. Let's send you live outside now for a look at beautiful Hilo Bay on this Tuesday afternoon. An absolutely stunning day. Don't forget to tune into Spotlight coming up at 1 o'clock.